Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crypt Choir. I am your host, Dixie Normus, otherwise known as Lewis. With me, a special guest today. We got Max Sternberg, otherwise known as WoundedSatellite.
How's it going, man? Appreciate you having me.
It's great to have you here. It's great to play a game in person after how many games online? Like in mainly chaos events.
Mainly the chaos events, but yeah, yours is a recognizable name. So I definitely remember playing against you in one of my first tournaments ever. So I've known you a long time without knowing you super well. But yeah.
Right. So it's finally great to play in person. A couple of games though, they were a little weird games, but we'll go into them a little later on. But first, I want to go through our deck choices for the tournament. So obviously, everyone knows you on Kinnan and kind of messing around a little bit on Omnix, but you brought Nadu today. So why Nadu?
Yeah, Nadu's kind of broken, and it's a pretty cool deck. I am always a fan of things that draw me cards and are two colors. Two colors has always been my kind of sweet spot for deck building because it leaves you so much open room to build around synergy and really build around a consistent strategy rather than being locked into too much high card quality, which I don't think it's bad to have really high card quality. And I recognize that, a deck like Blue Farm, for example, it gets to play a lot of the best cards, and they're going to have a lot of consistency because of that. But what has always been more interesting with Magic, and it's the styles of play that I think I pilot better in Magic, are things that are almost like putting gears into a machine and making something that's really exponential and cool. And that's always been my style of play, and I think it's very much reflected through Kinnan, Omnixilus, Talion, decks that really lock into a strategy and try and be as good at doing that thing as they can be at doing. And I looked at Nadu, and I understand that it has a lot of power as a turbo storm proactive strategy that's trying to win really quickly. And a lot of people are having a ton of success in that strategy, and I'm not saying it's not a good way to build the deck, but I looked at Nadu and I said, this is kind of a sick card advantage engine that sounds great because I like to draw a lot of cards and I like to sit back and be chill and play control. That's just my preferred way to play Magic. So I decided to try a version of Nadu, especially with all the hate on Nadu, where I think a lot of people were going to be focused on getting that thing off the board and killing it and saying kill on sight and all that. And I was like, okay, what if I didn't give them a reason to kill it on sight? What if I just told everyone at the start of the game, I'm Nadu control, I'm playing 30 pieces of interaction, my Shuko doesn't win me the game, it draws me 4 cards and I pass. And then I was just like, hey, I'm not going to play Nadu till like turn 4 or 5 and I already have some creatures on board and some type of enabler, and then try and go off later while just being interactive and taking it slow in the early game. And I wanted to try that out. I got to try it out for the first time at a random local a few weeks ago where I went 5-0 and won the event. And then I got to try it out last week before FISHBOWL at Snowy Summit, where I went 4-0-1 in Swiss, came in second overall the event. And yeah, just like the slower plan on Nadu has felt really, really good, especially in this current, more proactive meta. A lot of people are kind of being irresponsible and their view is like, oh, I just have to win faster, which just leans into the psyop of the Rockside community of trying to make everyone just not keep cope interaction. And so me being just so deep on interaction and trusting in my ability to kind of pop off aggressively late with value lets me sit back, be interactive, make sure the game gets to continue, and then trust in my ability to develop afterwards. And Nadu's felt really good for that play pattern that I love as a player, that the deck's really good. And yeah, it's been nice to win the game pretty effectively. Like, I know one of the things I did get locked into in Kinnan, which Kinnan's more overall flexible and I still think a higher ceiling as a deck, but there's some games in Kinnan when you do get into that grind state that like you just can't close it out yet. Similar with Talion as well, when I'm in those kind of hard control strategies. It's felt nice that Nadu has done a really good job fulfilling that control role that I've been looking for, but also being able to really effectively turn that corner when it's time. So I've been really enjoying the deck, and I plan on continuing to play it for a little bit and really see what it can do.
Yeah, the deck has been pretty good, fairly consistent. I believe, man, I think it has the highest conversion rate currently, which I think is, I don't know how the math is, because I think most of that conversion rate is really just like a lot of the top tier players like you and a few others, Tim, that are really putting in the numbers for it. So like, I want to know, it would be great to have a way to look at these decks on top deck, to be able to remove certain players to see how well maybe the deck is doing for the average player. So but it does have like a crazy conversion rate right now.
Yeah, I mean, it has a really good conversion rate, but I think one of the things to look at when you're getting into conversion rates, all that kind of thing, is every deck has some top tier players playing it. You know what I mean? But what's really interesting to me is when a deck's popularity grows, if its conversion rate stays the same. And I think that also shows a lot about how easy the deck is to pick up. Like the conversation of Kinnan and Blue Farm happened for a few months a while back, where Blue Farm was, skyrocketing in popularity, but its win rate and conversion were staying about the same, versus a deck like Kinnan, where it was skyrocketing in popularity, but its win rate and conversion rate went down into the fucking dirt.
Yeah, that was a little wild.
Yeah.
I guess, we'll see about that with Nadu. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of talk of Nadu getting banned. If it gets banned, I'm sure it'll be for like 60 card format, but not for EDH. Like, there's no way. They're not gonna ban like, other big things like.
Yeah. If they ban my bird before they ban fucking Ristic and Docs, I'd get out of here. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like, Nadu's annoying as fuck, but like I think we have more problematic cards in the format than Nadu. Yeah. Not saying Nadu isn't problematic. There's just more problematic stuff.
If they banned Nadu, I think it would be much more on the not Paradox engine, time wasting side of things. Right. But I mean, at the same time, like I understand that some people don't play out their Nadu turns very quickly. Like for anyone who's played against me on Nadu, like that shit churns. It does not take very long. When I'm doing my wind turn, my storm turn, it takes a few minutes. It's really not a problem. The one picture online that everyone's looking at where like a guy's reading a book, to be clear, I had it deterministically. The guy who's reading the book pulled out his book and told me to play it out. And then all my cards to like 100% say I win the game, my token creators and stuff just happened to be in like the bottom section of my library. So I just had to keep churning and get to them. But yes, that did not need to take that long. He just decided it would be funny to make me do it and read a book.
To be fair, he did the same thing to a wrong side popping off, I think, in the top 16. So
yeah, the guy was hilarious. Like I have nothing against him. It was funny as fuck. But
yeah, that was hilarious. So with Nadu right now being the new hotness right now, primarily for Simic, what is the difference between Nadu and Kinnan in terms of like card choices, your first 7 you're keeping, mulligans, and play patterns?
I mean, they're entirely different decks. Like I can't go into all of that right now just because that's like a lot to really delve into. But Kinnan is, I think, the most flexible deck in the format, and I will stand by that. Kinnan is the only deck in the format that can truly be a turbo deck, a mid-range deck, or a stacks deck, and pivot between all three of those like very confidently. And its card choices reflect that. It's on a very unique strategy. The knowledge that you learn from Kinnan doesn't really translate over to other decks. It's doing its own thing. Nadu is much more like basic high value Simic, which is the best Nadu enablers thrown in. That's the way I've done it. So when you compare the two lists, they're 40 cards different, which is an enormous amount. And the overlap they have is really lands, mana rocks, counterspells. Like every other card that is a card defining deck, synergistic style of piece is different. So yeah, I mean the way they play is just not even close to each other. Nadu I think is more powerful in this current meta, especially with this meta leaning more proactive. Nadu actually has a denser on the stack interaction package. Kinnan has like a huge, enormous interaction package, but a lot of that is based around his creature base. So Nadu's is a little more complete as an interactive package. So I think it is slightly better at having up interaction in the first couple turns, and then it is just able to like quickly take that pivot to winning the game, versus Kinnan that's more so going to grind you out. Nadu in my starting hands, there's a lot of flexibility from it. I usually just look for like some type of enablement paired with interaction is kind of what I'm mulliganing for in the control plan. Occasionally I've had those busted hands that it's just like, here's a token creator and a Shuko and a shitload of mana, and I'm like, okay, I'll try it, and sometimes that works. And then Kinnan, the mulligans are, I mean, so diverse. Kinnan, it's you need mana as step 1, and then step 2 is, do you have a card advantage engine? Do you have a creature tutor to get on a Seedborn or Consuming's Plan? Do you have a Trinisphere? Do you have a Manglehorn? Do you have a Glenelender? Do you have something to delay the game and keep it going so you can continue to present value? Like, they're very, very different decks. I still think Kinnan overall is significantly more meta resilient, where Kinnan's flexibility, what I've always liked about the deck is it's not a deck that I have to adjust the card choices to the meta at all. It's just a deck that you have to adjust the play patterns to the meta. Nadu is something that I think you will have to adjust the deck to the meta more.
I like that. I like that about Kinnan. That's a good way to describe Kinnan. You don't change cards for the meta, you change patterns. That's fantastic. I like that. That's really great. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I guess it really depends on what comes out in like Bloomburrow, but it seems like you are, at least for Nadu, you're doing the instance of like targeting everything, or you're doing more on like, I guess, your build or a little bit more control, and you're just relying on the artifacts and maybe some other instance or sorceries to target all your stuff. I think that's kind of like the two routes we have for Nadu this early on in its development of the deck.
Yeah, I mean, there's the landfall stuff, there's just the artifact stuff. My enablers are just the equipment, Seeker and Defeto, and then Sea Kings and Sylvan, and then like the token makers, and that's it. That's my naughty package, which means the rest of the deck is just good fucking cards, like good Simic cards that are good at controlling the game.
Okay, after that, I want to go about the meta breakdown for Fishbowl before we kind of talk about how we were feeling getting into the game. So, starting from the top, we had 13 Rockside decks, 6 of them making it into top 16. 17 Blue Farm decks, 3 of them into the top 16. 9 Nadus, 2 of them making it in. 9 Sisseis, 2 of them making it in. 7 Talions, 1 making it in. 2 Niv Mizzets, 1 making it in. And 1 Malcolm Vile Smasher, and that one alone deck making it in. Does this meta breakdown surprise you?
I mean, that's just going over the top 16 decks. When you look at the other decks that had like a high number of entries, you know, there were 8 Nagilas there, 5 Magdas, 5 Obs, 4 Kenrith. Like, this all looks pretty similar. The biggest surprise has really been just the outright downfall and lack of Kinnan that's been around lately.
Yeah.
And I think the weirdest deck in the format when it comes to metas is Roxai, because when you're in that California area and you get, you know, a certain crew of people to a tournament, suddenly you've got 15 Roxai decks and they're the best Roxai players. And then you'll go to another tournament on the other side of the country and there's 4 Roxais or 3 Roxais in a 160 person event, and like no one there knows how to play it. It really is a deck defined by a specific group of people, and if those group of people are there, it's a Roxai event, and if those group of people are not there, sometimes it isn't. Like,
yeah, I find that a little surprising looking at when, like, you know, other creators are making these top 16 breakdowns, how there's just not a Roxai oppressive force in certain parts of the country.
Well, Roxai is also a deck that I don't think people realize how much Roxai is helped by there being other Roxais. Like, when you're in a pod with another Roxai, and especially like this tournament, there was an unbelievable amount of double Roxai pods, especially near the top. When you have another Roxai, it makes it so much harder to worry about one of them, and they also just feed the shit out of each other. And I mean, even as you saw in our finals game, like, they very often, which I've actually talked to some about this before, like, they will usually give their Wish Cloud to the other Roxai, because their opinion then is it makes people so much less likely to use interaction on you right now, because they know that they lose to the other person if they do. And so they're putting people in prisoners' dilemmas where it's like, would you rather lose to Roxai or lose to Roxai? So they really feed off each other. And so I think if it's just like a singular Roxai decks in a meta where they don't have other things that are at that same proactive level to put pressure on the table, they don't do as well. But when there's 2 of them there, it also changes people's mulligans, right? Like, how do you feel about looking at a hand in Blue Farm when you're like, this hand's okay, it has 1 piece of interaction, but there's 2 Roxais in the pod? Like, does this seem realistic?
Absolutely
Absolutely not, right? So it also makes people more likely to keep greedier hands where they're like, I can't stop both of them, so I might as well try and win.
Yeah.
So I think having multiple Roxais and density of Roxai events like does kind of psyop the community to like lean into what Roxai wants to make their wins easier.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess that's like a good thing about the deck for Blue Farm, where I can keep a similarly fast and greedy hand to Roxai. Definitely probably not as like fast and resilient as they can, but at least I can keep something pretty fast, which I'll talk about in my top 16 game, which is what I kept because of Roxai. And if Roxai wasn't at the table, there was no way I was keeping that hand, probably. But yeah, we'll get into that. Meta breakdown of this event doesn't seem very surprising to me. It is surprising to me that not a single Najeela made it into the top 16. There's usually at least one Najeela in a lot of tournaments, at least making it to the top 16. Just seeing Najeela not make it out there for this tournament is surprising, because I feel like it can easily pivot to like just creature only combos and like use a Roxai as a way to like get people to use their interaction and then present their own win. So I am surprised that Najeela didn't make it, or a Kitten at all either. But it doesn't look like there was only 4 kittens.
Yeah.
compared to 9 nowadays, I guess. A little more than double. But that's just, I don't know. How do you feel about this breakdown compared to stuff out in the Midwest? Like, do you feel like a complete different meta here in California than outside of it?
Well, I'm not in the Midwest. I'm in Colorado currently, and the Colorado meta is very very specific and full of a lot of weird decks. We've got a lot of like, one deck champions here. We have Sylvan on Selvala, we have Jacob on Narset, we have Tyler on Arkham Daxon. Like, we have people who are the best pilot on their specific decks, and like a lot of those people live here. So this is a very weird meta. But then we do have our normal, blue farms and Rog Size and all the good stuff as well. I think that's just like the generic meta. There's always going to be a certain collection of the S tier decks. Over in Ohio, where I used to live, I'm still connected with that community. I know a lot of the top players over there are picking up Rog Size, and I know like NATO won Final Fortune on it. As well. Yeah. So like Roxai is spreading. the deck is kind of cracked. I mean, the addition of Flare of Duplicate. I've been playing against Roxai since I started cEDH. Like when I was in my first ever cEDH pods online, and I was getting into the format. Like one of my consistent buddies only played Roxai, so I have so many games against this deck. And them getting in one set the additions of Necro Dominance and Flare of Duplication is fucking absurd. Giving them another essentially top tier, like obviously it's worse than Necro and it's worse than Oz, but giving them another top tier payoff that's also hard to counter. That is a very easy turn one play paired with another piece of like incredible free interaction that's ridiculously flexible. Wild. Like that's really what pushed the deck over the edge here to being in this S tier range. Like it's right up there with Blue Farm right now, in my opinion. It is at that level. I
feel like it might, I guess, depends on how many more people play it. We'll see how like the next month will go, especially coming up to the Envy, how much more Roxite is going to do. I feel like Roxite's probably going to overlap Blue Farm within the next month or two, just because of those cards. Like Blue Farm could try to play a little bit more greedy, like go full Grixis speed with white or like silence effects, but you're just spread out with your colors and cards that, Rograk Silence is more condensed to 3 colors that I think they're probably gonna beat out Blue Farm.
I mean, I don't even think it's the density of like colors. I don't think the color production is an issue, because if you look at most of what their lands do and everything, it's all fetches. It's all like being able to consistently produce the mana you want and treasures and all that kind of stuff. What allows Rogsite to beat so much faster is Rograk. Rograk is such a consistent enabler. He makes about 10 cards in your deck broken. And there's no other deck that gets to do that without having a card in their hand be Jeweled Lotus. And so that's what's so wild about Rograk, is the consistency of just making sure, like, oh, my Culling the Weak, Diabolic Intent, Phyrexian Tower, Jessica's Will, Deflecting Swap, Fierce Guardianship, Deadly Rollick, Flare of Duplication. Like, this package of cards is immediately turned on and broken, and no other deck gets to do that right now. And when that's paired with the Grixis colors for speed, it's providing you more mana, more tutors, more interaction. Just go.
I guess what I mean by that is, like, I can keep I'll look at a 7 and it'll be something similar, like, right? It'll be Dark Ritual, maybe Necro, and then other cards like Savines and other slower cards that are with like, resilient win pieces. And, if you fail once, you can go it again. With Roxite, it's just like pure speed. It's got all the stuff, like you said, maybe one of the cards like, Land, Ritual to Sack Rog, Jessica's Will, like that alone is just already like way better. But I guess that's kind of like the trade-off with Blue Farm. Like, you are slowing down the deck more, but you're having way more consistent and resilient wins.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think of every deck as like, I don't even know what those charts are called. Those like pentagonal or hexagon style things where it like has the like stats leading in certain directions, right? Like Blue Farm is a deck that wins on the axis of card advantage. That's always been what that deck is. It is just a high quality pile of cards that has really consistent card advantage because its plans are Tymna, Crom, Esper, Mystic. Like, that's what you're mulliganing for most of the time, unless you have the nutty proactive hand. Rogsai doesn't do that. Like, the concept of Rogsai's backup plan being Rhystic and Mystic is wild, when that's most decks' main plan.
Yeah. Well, after that top 16 breakdown, let's get into some quick breakdowns of our rounds leading up to that final pod. Do you remember your first round, or do you want me to bring that up for you?
First round, was it like Kenrith, Najila, and something else?
Yes, it was you in first seed, Vile, Thras, Kenrith, and then Najila.
Yeah, that game, it was one of those games that just like kind of got lucky, where like I just hit really good. I think I played it like a tiny bit slow. We interacted with each other a little bit. I think I like put down an Umbral Mantle really quickly, and I like didn't have the right land colors for Nadu or something. And then yeah, I was able to like get a turn where I could equip it a couple times, get a little bit of value, interact as necessary, and then just storm off on the secondary turn. That game wasn't really special. It was just a game that kind of showed the normal consistent plan of the deck, where it was like, hey, interact a little bit, have the right pieces to stop someone from doing something, and then win the game. I don't even remember who interacted with who, but it was like definitely someone used a couple pieces to stop someone, and like the second I won, everyone at the table was like, I would have won on my next turn. And I was like, okay.
The classic cEDH.
Yeah.
I would have won. I would have turn order.
Yeah, turn order simulator. Yeah.
In my first round, I honestly was feeling a little like, shit, because I was going fourth. First seat was a Stella Lee. Second was a Brea, which I was excited to see since I haven't seen Brea in like 5 ever. Then we had another blue farm deck, and then me, which is pretty great because I have another blue farm ahead of me, so hopefully maybe he'll eat interaction. I think I mulliganed down to 5, and it was just like a little bit of land, interaction, and a fish. Like, you know what? This seems, in this like blue heavy pod, this seems fantastic. Proceeded to play fish. Game went on for so long. I think I had fish paid up to like 5, and I was drawing nothing but interaction. So it was pretty funny. I just sat there. Stella Lee kept trying to interact with Brea. Brea was playing Aethersworn Canonist, which is pretty good because the stack speeds they don't care about. They can easily play around it. But they kept trying to like bounce it, solve the problem. So Stella Lee kept trying to like get rid of stuff to try to go off. But I just like sat there. They were trying to show win cons. Other people were trying to like, you know, get with me on like trying to interact with it. But I was able to bully them, be like, hey, I'm fourth seat. I got Freya coming up, and then I got another blue farm. Unless you guys show me your hands and you guys all got interaction, I'm not using any of mine. And I was able to successfully bully the table into showing that they had no interaction, then using my interaction, and them still feeding my fish. And then finally, when we had Brea had a Hullbreaker Horror on the battlefield, trying to go for a win with the Grafdigger's Cage, turn off the 2 blue farm players and go off, I was able to just win on the stack with a Born Upon a Win breach line and take it there, which was surprising. I honestly didn't feel like I was going to get it because it was going for so long. The other decks were starting to like catch up to me in like engines and draws, and luckily they just didn't have any counter spells, but they had a lot of wins in hand. So that was pretty good game. I was pretty able to successfully politic other people to start spending all the resources and me not having to use any of mine. And then finally at the end, sneaking in a win with a flash speed, which is pretty nice.
When you can have the card advantage engine and not use your interaction, that normally results in winning the game.
Yep. Especially when you have a lot more scarier decks in front of you to eat up all the heat for you. That definitely helps out. All right, let's go into round 2. It seems like it was pretty fun for you. We had Zane. Who's Zachary? I don't think I remember Zach. Oh yeah, he was playing on Nadu as well. You were on Nadu, and then a Stella Lee. How was that?
Yeah, this game was kind of nothingness. It was pretty funny. So yeah, when Zane, me, Stella, and I looked at Stella and I was like, hey man, could we pretty please be responsible here? And he was like 100%. like we're on the same page. And I was like, cool. And we both kept first 7, which sounded amazing, right? My first 7 was a Gemstones, Etherland, Fish, and Elf hand, which I'm like, okay, against Roxai, like I need to keep that. That is a turn 1 fish with mana, draw a bunch of cards. And Stella Lee was on the exact same page where they had a turn 1 Ristic. Sadly, Zane's hand was just absolutely fucking broken, and it didn't matter what we did. Part of what was so good about Roxai. So yeah, I mean, he on the play just played out some mana. We both played out a fish at a Ristic, and we were like, let's get it, bro. And we quickly discovered that Zane's hand was just too good. Yeah, he just went off on turn 2 and was able to cast a Nas. And I was talking, me and Stella at this point were immediately like, we're just revealing hands to each other. Like, let's be responsible here. And the only piece of interaction we had that was active was a Pact Negation. And I told him, I was like, look, man, like, we're obviously losing here right now. I recommend you use the Pact. I am more than happy to like agree right now if you use this Pact and I somehow win this game, like I will draw it, like all that kind of stuff, because otherwise we're just losing right now. So Zane very quickly is like, if you use the pact, the Nas will still be resolving. And I was like, just use it then. So he used the pact, and then Zane was like, LOL, last card in hand, Flare of Duplication, I'll make another Nas. So yeah, it didn't matter what we did. So Zane just dunked on us on turn 2 with like an absolute first 7 snap keep god draw. Which just, I don't know if it's worth saying, but I know some people have had like questions about some of Zane's hands. 100% he did nothing that would make me raise any suspicion. I don't think he has ever done anything that would make me raise any suspicion. The deck is designed to have quick wins. Why the fuck would you be suspicious because the deck has quick wins? like,
yeah, I mean, I've seen Broncos win with like 3 cards in hand. Like, it's just, that's a deck.
Yeah,
it's just, that's
you can cut that out if you don't want to include that, but like I think it's absolutely fucking ridiculous that anyone is accusing Zane of anything.
No, yeah, it would be career suicide for Zane to do something like that. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, it's not happening. Relax, people.
Yeah. Going into my round 2, I had a Elsha and first seat. I was second. I had a baby blue farm and then a Chu lane. I heard the Chu lane was going to be a stack deck. So I was a little concerned, but I was hoping to maybe find a fast hand to for study or some kind of win con. Luckily, I think in my second 7, I had like a turn 3 Nas. So I'm like, it seems pretty good. And yeah, everyone set up, playing some cards, playing some dorks, and I managed to find some more mana. And I believe, I think it was my turn 3. I just showed Nas. Nobody had anything, and I just got there. Nice. Pretty uneventful. I was like, sure, someone had stuff, and they're like, nope, no interaction. We just had a bunch of engines. So like, nice, awesome,
very nice.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So that's how my round 2 went. So pretty easy. Nothing too crazy about that one. Yours. Let me see here.
My round 3. I remember dearly. We had Corvald on the play, right?
Let me pull it up. I believe, yes, Corvald was on the play.
Yeah, it was Corvald going first on the play, me going second. We had Baby Blue Farm going third, and we had Ori on Rogside going fourth. This game was very special to me in that it is the only mulligan punt I have ever made while playing cEDH. I am not playing Kinnan, I'm playing Nadu, and I did not take cards out of Kinnan for this deck because Kinnan is my baby outside of my Prophecy Floristic because like that card's so pretty. But so the Mystic Remora I'm used to playing is the Secret Lair full art foil one. And the Mystic Remora I have in my Nadu deck is an old border foil from Dominaria Remaster, whatever it is. And I also play Mystical Tutor in this deck that is also an old border blue card. It's foil. So what ended up happening is I look at my first 7 and I see a Chrome Mox, I see some lands, and I see a old border blue card with this angle showing the top left corner of the card, and I see MYST, and I'm like, sick, I got a fish, and I put the hand down. And then I go to my turn 1 in the game and I draw and I play my Chrome Mox, and I go to pitch a card, and I go to pitch the Mystical Tutor, and I'm like, hold the fuck up. And I look at my hand and I don't have a fish. So I've never made that mistake before. Yeah, I was pretty shell shocked, and like my face just went like, holy shit, because this hand like if it doesn't have a fish, this hand is outright fucking unkeepable. It has nothing but lands in it, and I'm just like, wow, this is absolutely the worst keep I've ever had. I literally told the table, because I showed them the Mystical Tutor as I went to pitch it, and then like caught myself realizing I didn't have a fish. And then I explained to the table what happened. I'm like, I thought this was a Mystic Remora, and I fucked up really bad. Thank God, my turn 1 top deck kind of saved me. My turn 1 top deck was Urza Saga. Oh. So I ended up pitching the Mystical Tutor to the Chrome Mox, and I played the Urza Saga on turn 1 because that will at least turn 3 give me access to Shuko. From this position, the game went to shit, where Ori played out a turn 1 fish with a shitload of mana, and the other cards in my hand that weren't lands at this point were just a Mental Misstep and a Dispel, which I love. I mulligan for cope interaction. I ended up where the Blues Clues player on turn 1 cast a Dark Writ, and I literally show him the Mental Misstep, and I'm like, just tell me it's not Necro. And he was like, I can't tell you that. And I was like, okay, mental. And then Ori plays out his fish with a bunch of mana. And then there's a bunch of mana rocks on the battlefield here. And Corvald, going before their second turn, goes to Vampiric Tutor. And the other counter I have in hand is Dispel. I turn it towards him, not Ori. And I'm like, bro, like I can't do this right now. And we end up having a conversation because he immediately recognizes, like, obviously if he's getting doxed, I have to counter this because like it's just him winning the game. And so he's like, okay, let's be responsible here. And like I tell him very clearly, I'm like, look, like my hand obviously is trash here. It doesn't do anything. We've at least slowed down Blue's Clues on their Dark Grit plan, and like they clearly didn't even have enough like black lands and everything to get to Necro from the conversations and what they showed me. And then Ori just has a fish. And I'm like, let's not just feed him a shitload of cards. Let's try and slow him down because he's already drawn a few here from just like Vampiric Tutor and some other things. Like, let's be responsible. And he offers to get a Bowmaster and kill the Rograk. And I'm immediately like, that sounds actually absolutely fucking fantastic. Like that's great. Let's keep this game a little bit more at parity here. So he does that, which I understand some people viewed it as a questionable decision because he's sacrificing his own access to winning a little bit. But I still think it was a very responsible decision. Was it the correct from like a proactive Corvold sense? No, but I don't know how to handle that when your opponent's showing a counter, and if he forces me to use it, then like Rogside just wins.
Right.
So yeah, he ends up doing that. On my turn 2, I literally do nothing. I just like hold up mana pass again, and then on Ori's next turn, when he has a few more cards in hand, he just looks at me. He's like, you gotta force a will. And I'm like, I'm not telling you what type of interaction I have. And he turns to Corvold. He's like, does he have a force of will? And Corvold's like, I'm not going to tell you what type of interaction he has. And Ori goes, if you don't tell me, I'm just going to play a defense grid and pass. And I just tell him, you can do whatever you want, bro.
Oh
and
God.
so he just plays it.
That's so wild. Politics right there. What?
And he told me he thought I had like force negation, and so he thought playing the defense grid was going to force me to use it. But he played that and passed. And in my brain as well, I'm like, I don't think Corvold has access to a win here, and I'm getting a Shuko next turn. So if you really want to do that, like by all means, my guy.
Right.
So he plays defense grid, he passes. Corvold goes bet, plays out a bunch of mana and nauses. So immediately, I think we lose the game to Corvold here. Corvold hit 0 free mana on their Naz, going down to 1 life.
No.
And they forgot to hold priority on their Naz and crack their LED. They were so excited about Nazing with a defense grid. So they should have had the win there. If they cracked their LED, they would have had the win. Reminder to everyone to crack their LED. But so then on my turn, I get my Shuko, and I end up running out of mana, and I don't have anything. I'm able to hold up 0 mana, but I just like draw a few cards. And then we have the conversation with Corvold, because Ori during his conversation did reveal a few cards to Corvold and ended up revealing them to the table afterwards once it was just known what they were. One of them was Tainted Pact. And the problem was post Naz and discard, Corvold's graveyard was good enough for Ori to just win with a mean bet. Right. And so we had to have a conversation about this defense grid and everything. And so I was telling Corvold, I was like, I think I should kill you. And he was like, if you don't kill me, I'll crack this LED. And then I'll lose my hand. But I think we have a higher chance of getting to a draw if, because of Ori's Mystic Remora, he has a Bowmaster, like he can ping my Nadu to draw me cards to look for interaction. So I end up saying like, okay, we'll pass it over to Blue's Clues turn, who the conversation was he had the ability to then Cycriff the D-Grid, so I could hypothetically hold up my Dispel and stuff like that. So we had that whole conversation, and I end up passing on combat so that we can go to Blue's Clues turn and see what he draws to then make a decision. And I do want to apologize a little bit here. I know Ori was a little frustrated. We spent a lot of time talking, and looking back on it, was 100% slow play. It was not intentional, but the thing I did learn from Ori after the game was, when he was like, you have to do something to progress the game here, when we were just like mid-conversation, I was like, okay, I would like to move to combat, or like, okay, I would like to move to actual declare attackers. Like, I tried to just like move phases as game progression, which I thought was okay. And I thought that at least counted as progressing the game in some regard, but I guess it doesn't technically. So I was not intentionally trying to slow play with that. It was just, we were having like a intense conversation about like, do we kill this Corvold? We were trying to not lose the game. And like, it was a conversation about killing the Corvold player with the Corvold player, where he was like trying to get to an ID, obviously, because he had whiffed. So yeah, that was just a weird one, but I do want to apologize for the slow play. It was not intentionally trying to slow play. It was just a lot of conversation. We go to Blue's Clues turn, and then he untaps and draws, and then he just turns a Cabal Ritual into Necropotence towards me, and he's like, convince me not to do this. And I'm like, brother. Keep in mind, this guy's at like a little over 30 life, and there was a Bowmaster and a Mystic Grimoire on the battlefield. And the way the mana would work out is he would have to, with like no other cards in hand after this, he would Cabal Ritual, Necropotence, 1 mana left. That was, I think, just like 5 color Lotus Petal or something. And so I'm like, okay, so if you're doing this here, you need to essentially only go 20 cards deep because you have to fight through a Mystic Grimoire with a Bowmasters to ping you. And in that 20 cards, you need to hit exactly Simian Spirit Guide, either Final Fortune or Born Upon a Wind, and the other cards that deterministically win you the game from this position. Does that seem likely? And he was like, not really, but like, what other opportunity am I going to get? And I was like, sure, but at the same time, you can Psych-Rift Ori, and then we actually have a reasonable chance of getting to a draw here. And he was like, well, what about you? You have a Shuko now and a couple of creatures. And I said very clearly, I was like, I 100% promise I will not win in my next turn. Like, no matter what I hit on anything, I promise I'll be passing a turn to you again, like, deterministically. And so we end up convincing him to Psych-Rift the D-Grid. And yeah, Ori is able to still pretty effectively go for a win attempt here. He pretty much put himself in the same position where he was able to get down a Necropotence with 1 additional mana where he needs to hit it. And Ori was at 37 and just went 35 deep. And did not hit the Simian Spirit Guide or the Born or whatever piece he was missing there. He didn't hit it. So he ends up discarding to hand size, and it goes to my turn. I Shuko through my creatures and just hit like Force of Neg Pact, like everything revealed off the Nadu triggers, just a ton of interaction. And then, as promised, pass the turn. And then we go to Blue Scoo's turn, and he's talking to Ori now because Ori has his perfectly sculpted 7 at 2 life. And he's like, and the Blue Scoops player goes, okay, I'm going to cast this Intuition for interaction. And he's like, Ori, we're going to protect your win so we can get an ID from Max. And I was like, sure, man. So he Intuitions, gets Flusters, passes to Ori turn. Ori rolls for Mana Crypt, dies. Oh. And then he passes the turn to me and offers the concession. And I won the game. Realistically there, if he had offered me, like when we were fighting against Ori, something like, you know, you do this, but like UID, if we get there, I would have totally taken that. But that wasn't something he offered.
Right. Yeah. I guess I think he was still looking at that Necro hand and thinking maybe he can still get there. So that's probably why he didn't offer.
I have a chance. Yeah.
He was looking at that. But I think he didn't think too far ahead when he told him, like, are you going to hit the Spirit Guide and 1 of 2 cards in your, what, 80
in
cards
20
left?
Yeah, in 20 cards plus the other pile of cards that has to win the game because he had no win pieces in hand. So he had to hit Simian, Born or Final Fortune, a bunch of mana and wins and the win, which is a little much to ask for out of like 20 to 24 cards.
Yeah, that I mean, I've been in that position and just said fuck it and sent it and whiffed and died, but you know.
Yeah, I mean the other problem was like if he whiffs and dies, which the chances are he whiffs and dies, it also means Ori draws 10 cards in that process and 100% wins the game.
For sure. All right. That definitely makes my round 3 look like nothing because I just ID'd. It was me, a Kenneth player, my buddy Ruban, and Sergio. And Sergio was a 4th seat. And we were all like, let's ID and go eat pizza. And Sergio was like thinking about it. He wasn't sure of doing it. And I know my buddy was like really hungry. He's like, Sergio, if you don't take this ID, I'm going to punt this game to my buddy Lewis over here. So take the ID.
Music to your ears.
Sergio was like, oh, okay, we'll take the ID. I'm like, awesome, let's go. And then me, Dylan, and Rupan just went next door and we just ate some pizza for like the round and got to relax. So that was that was pretty hilarious. I wasn't expecting that for my buddy to hit Sergio with that crazy politic right there. That was great. So let's go into round 4. We got in first seat a Akiri Thrasios, second Nagila, you in third, and a Prosh in 4th seat.
Oh, this was this game. Yeah. This was the game of the book.
Yep.
This is the game Nadu did the Nadu thing. I don't know how else to put it. Like, yeah, no, there wasn't much to this one. This was a game that I was just able to really effectively storm off, hit the right cards, hit the right pieces, made the tokens, did the thing. Really wasn't too much to it.
Mine was pretty funny because it was me on 1st seat, so I'm feeling pretty good. 2nd, Magda. 3rd, Derevi. 4th, Rog Silas. Rog tried to go for it. It didn't get there. I believe they like whiffed or didn't find enough stuff. So they couldn't get there. I got stopped, and then we were stopping Magda at the same time. And then Derevi was just like building up advantage, but could never really get there. And I think I showed like 2 times going for a win attempt, and I got stopped. Magda had a Vexing Bubble that had to be shut off for quite a while of like going for a win. I was like at the very end, I went for another like win attempt number 4 or something. and I finally got stopped again. I was short one piece of interaction, and we just went to an ID because like no one could get there. We were able to slow down Magdus, so they were like kind of dead in the water. We stopped Rogsai. I was stopped like multiple times, and Derevi like had something, but I think they had mainly interaction and were wanting to save it for them. The rest of the table were kind of like, we're able to bully him enough to like use enough interaction to like stop me. But yeah, so we just pretty back and forth. Everyone's kind of scared looking at each other of like if anyone has any more resources. But yeah, not much really happened to the game. We literally just sat there like counter, pass, remove, pass, ID.
Yep.
So that was pretty fun game overall, but like a little sad. I was short one piece of interaction from going for the win. But oh well, that happens. Going into round 5 was the best round, I think.
It was our round. It was a good one.
Yeah, that was pretty great. In first seat was Rogsai. Second seat, you and Nagi.
No, they weren't Rogsai. It was Dargo Ikra in first seat.
Oh, sorry. It was, I don't know why it loaded weird. Yeah.
Or sorry, Dargo Rayhan. I was Ikra.
You and Nadu. Rogsai in third, and then me in fourth seat.
Yes.
So,
and this game had the most exciting pregame action I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Oh my god. Go for it. You talk about it. You were the most like.
I was like, this is so hot. This is so hot. This is the game that Rogsai just slams down a ley line of anticipation as a pregame action, and I was like shocked. I was like, let's go. I'm so down. And it was crazy too, because not only did they have the ley line of anticipation, they had the most perfect hand to work with it that I've ever seen in my life. So before Duggar Ikra could even play a land, this is, to be clear, objectively incorrect to just do all of this before Duggar Ikra's turn, because like they're a Dockside deck, and theoretically he could have given him a turn 1 win. But turn 0, during his upkeep, he just goes, this is too hot to not do, like Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal, Paradise Mantle, Rog Rack. All in pregame, just to get it on the board. And then Duggar Ikra, I think, didn't keep the best hand or mauled a kind of weird, or was it me and you that mauled low and they kept like 7?
Yeah, we mauled down to like 5? Like,
yes, okay, that was what happened. Me and you mauled low. They both kept 7. Dargo Ikra had like the slow turn 1 start though, and then I had my normal as well, like land whatever dork start, and then Rogsai's rest of their hand after just Leyline and rocks was a Wheel of Fortune that just reset everything.
Yeah.
And everyone got different tiers of wheels here. It didn't seem like anyone got a great wheel.
No, this definitely should have been some foreshadowing for the future for us, but yeah, that wheel, it wasn't terrible. I had like decent stuff, but it was more like, you know what, I'd rather look at a second 7 knowing that these cards are no longer in the deck. I don't need to draw them. And I'm like, I think it's fine. I wasn't too effed by the wheel, but it definitely wasn't great to have a Rockside player get all this free stuff and then like reload basically for free. Because like, them having to do all that stuff on like the pregame action going in the turn to just wheel is like you're not being hit by like a MBT or anything like that, or at least not as much as you normally would.
Yeah, no, I mean it really worked out fantastic for them. And yeah, so your wheel was middle tier. Dargo Ikra's was definitely bad. Or Dargo Rayhan's, John Dargo, was definitely very bad. And then mine was very middle as well, where I know I had a Seeker. I didn't hit a lot of mana, I didn't hit a lot of things, but so turn 2, I just go to play a Seeker. The rest of my hand, like pretty much, I remember the rest of my hand. It did nothing. It was like a crop rotation and a Dosen and just like lands. It didn't do shit. So I play Seeker of Skybreak, which is one of the enablers for Nadu. Pass back to Rockside because that's all we can do. They also didn't hit like a quick win wheel. They just hit more mana and stuff. And we get back to Dargo Rayhan's turn, and they go for like play out a blasting station and a couple of cheap creatures. And he's like, I'm pretty sure I should just like hit the Seeker right now. And we have a political conversation about it where I'm like, here's my entire hand. I show it to him and I'm like, you see that I have nothing for Rogsai. You see that I can actually do nothing. And so he's like, okay, I'm not going to hit it right now. And I'm like, cool. And then on my turn after him, I play Nadu and he's like, okay, I think I should hit your Seeker now. And I'm like, you've seen my hand. You know I have nothing. Like, I would say we have Rogsai coming up. Like, I will happily make a deal that whenever you want to hit my Seeker, no matter what cards have hit, like, even if I can protect it, I will let you kill it. Like, that's fine. But I think you should let me get a couple of cards here so I'm able to interact potentially. and he ends up going to just kill the Seeker anyway. And I'm like, okay, I don't really have literally anything I can do here because my hand does absolutely nothing. So I snap my Seeker, untap 2 lands, replay Seeker. That was my way around it.
Pretty hot.
And then it works. I mean, it works. And then, yeah, Rock's Eye still couldn't do anything, surprisingly. And we just kind of did that cycle again until my Seeker was then active. And then I was able to start, like, attempting to go off in some capacity, where in my, like, 9 cards I got in that turn cycle from the Seeker, where everyone else just, like, didn't get good hands, I was able to hit, like, some counter magic and a Dosin and an Umbral Mantle and stuff like that. And also a Cavern of Souls that I notably put on human.
Very notable. We
very notably.
We all remembered that Cavern was on human.
Cavern was on human because I had a Dosin in hand, and so
yeah.
And then we go to my turn, and you know I untap.
Before you go to your turn,
sure.
Me and Roxai, which I hated, had to team up to stop you. Of like, what are we gonna do? Roxai's showing me his hand, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, yeah, you're like a dark side away from winning. Like, you got some scary stuff, but like, you're kind of not doing anything for at least a turn. Me, I got like half pieces of combos and like some interaction, and I had a, what did I have out? A fish or a Ristic Study? I had some draw engine.
Yeah, you both had a draw engine.
Yeah, so we were just like we're just gonna rely on this draw engine of like, can we do this? We're like going back and forth, like, all right, you can cast this now, draw me a card. You can cast this. If he tries to go off on a stack, we'll be casting these spells to draw each other cards and try to find something. And the only thing in my hand that I'm like I have all the wrong pieces of interaction in my hand. So I'm like, yeah, against a Nadu deck, like these pieces aren't gonna do nothing. Like Nadu's already on the field, and I got a Strict Serenade. Like this is like we're in a shit spot. So like, fuck it, set up, try to hope for the best that these Ristics will draw us there. Pass over to you, and then it gets to the turn.
Which meanwhile, I also have like 4 or 5 pieces of interaction in hand at this point. Like my deck is all interaction, bro. Which is what I love. When I start going off on the card, when I start drawing with a Seeker, like everyone just sees that I have Force and Mind Break and everything else. And they're like, oh, we're so cooked. But yeah, so on my turn, I do a couple of Seeker draws, and then what I should have done first was go to combat and swing with my Nadu, because I had a cloned Timna I forgot about.
Yeah, you copied my Timna.
I didn't do that first. That was a mistake. And then I tapped my Cavern and a couple other mana sources, and I put a Dosin on the stack. And putting this Dosin on the stack resulted in like a fucking 10-minute conversation between you and Rogsai. That really was where you revealed everything to each other. And you know, he ends up Vampiric Tutoring for a Mind Break Trap, so that if we get into a counter war, it's active, and yada yada yada. And then finally you're like, okay, let's start here. Strict Serenade. And it had been so long that I just said, like, I was looking at my hand, I was like, I don't think this is where I fight right now, because I didn't want to put the MBT active yet, because the thing the more important card to resolve than the Dosin was actually the Umbral Mantle, because that was my enablement to actually try and win here. And so I end up like, I forget if I threw 1 counter on the Dosin or not. I think I might have thrown 1 on the Strict Serenade, and then you guys had the response for it. I said, okay, I'm going to stop fighting over this one here to make sure I can deal with the MBT and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we get into a little bit more of an interaction battle over the next few minutes, and we end up coming to the decision where I'm like, okay, I think I'm 1 piece short of beating you guys here because of the Strict Serenade. And so I offered the idea, and we take the draw.
Well, the guttural response though,
yeah, so that was that. Sorry, yes, that was the thing that changed my mental math. Is I thought I had you and Rogsai cooked, and then on one of my random counter spells, misdirection or something, Dargo Rayhan had guttural response, and that was where like I mentally flipped to like, okay, I think they got me here by 1 piece, and just from the way you guys were talking and showing stuff to each other, like what I could read from the situation, and so that was why I decided to stop fighting and offer the ID, because I didn't want to just keep drawing Rogsai a billion cards. No,
at some point he was like 4 cards in and then stopped showing me his hand. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, I really hope we could stop you here and still force an ID, because I'm scared Roxai's gonna be like, no, we stopped him, I don't want an ID.
Well, that was why I was telling you, like, hey, stop countering stuff, let Rogsai do things.
He stopped showing me his hand, and then I think he thought about it and revealed his hand anyways, but he was very like trying to be cagey about it, and then had like a lot of like value pieces, but like still no definitive win. But I'm like, you can definitely cobble up.
You can probably get there. Yeah, you can get there.
So I was like, okay, I know what I'm gonna have to do here. If you show another piece of interaction, I'm gonna have to Painted Pact, dig for a pact of negation, put that on the stack, and offer the ID. Otherwise, like, or I'll just let you in if he doesn't want to take the ID.
Yeah,
so that was like
which
the last thing I
I
had.
still had a couple more pieces, and I had a way to get back like one counter from graveyard as well. So like there's still a chance I could have got there, but I didn't want to take the risk on just drawing marks. I had building cards.
Yeah.
But so we agree on an ID round 5 of day 1, which I was a little upset by because I told myself no IDs.
Oh.
And then
yeah.
And then I I'm walking away, and 15 minutes later, it just fucking hits me, man. Just fucking, like I'm sitting down, and it's like a wave of knowledge just blasts me in the face. Brother, you tapped Cavern for Dosen. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I had my buddy. I left. I was like, man, what a crazy game. And I go, I'm like, I wanted to go buy some cards, and I'm there, and my buddy comes up to me. He's like, why did Max let you counter your spell? I'm like, what are you talking about? He had a Cavern on human. I'm just there looking at cards. Oh.
Which for future reference, if you are a spectator of a game, that is the type of thing you are actually allowed to call a judge over and stop a game about. Because so things you are not allowed to do. Obviously, you cannot reveal any information, give people any play lines, whatever. But if you ever see something that is an incorrect game state, or something that is like not legal in the rules of Magic, that is the type of thing that you can call a judge over and say something to the judge. Where the situation there, like if my Cavern was, which I explicitly said I'm tapping Cavern for Dosen when I cast it, and I'm using the green from Cavern, like I explicitly said all the things to make it very clear my Dosen was Cavern uncounterable.
You did.
And then we just talked for so long that I forgot. But like, if you see that, it is then technically against the legal game state that Dosen was countered. That is not something that could legally happen in the rules of Magic. So if you ever are a spectator and you see a situation like that, you can call a judge and correct that game state, which I would have really appreciated. Because 100% with that strict Serenade not functioning, I had you guys cooked.
1000%.
So I was pretty mad at myself there. That was I still think to this day the worst punt I've ever made in a tournament game. Now.
Yeah.
Was letting you counter my Dosen.
That was great. We talked about it a little bit more during the tournament where we would have to go pivot to another line of me having to like pass Painted Pacts, find something to turn on the MBT. But with how much cards you had in your hand, like you said, you probably still could have gotten through.
Right, and I also had
it would have been,
it was definitive because I had my own MBT. So the other thing was you guys going through a line to turn on his MBT to hit my Dosen also just means my MBT is active as well as my misdirection, Force of Will, and everything else. So I 100% had you guys cooked if we remembered that my Dosen can be countered. But yeah, that was a funny one. Which should I say what my present for the deck was?
Yes.
So if anyone has seen my decks in person, you know that there's a lot of foils in them. I really like shiny cards. The reason that my decks are blinked out is I get them presents from tournament performances, where I often put some of the money that I win in events back into the deck in like presents for the deck performance, and just continuously rewarding them for doing well for me. So Nadu's obviously been doing well for me these last few events, and so my specific present that will be like the card I remember as the Fishbowl 4 card is I got it the OG foil Dosen, so that's in the mail right now.
Oh yeah, that's great. Now I'm glad because now moving forward, you're gonna be looking at that card and be like, "Fucking Dixie."
I will never forget that shit again. I will do a double check whenever someone goes to counter my Dosen that I do not have a Cavern of Souls in the battlefield. Like,
yeah. Oh, that. But so that was a pretty crazy and unfortunate game to end day 1 at. So. Day 1, how are you feeling with the tournament so far?
I was feeling good. I mean, I knew I was already locked at 16 there, because I would be, regardless of what, I'd be like the highest 16. I was very upset with myself because like the Dosen punt, that's the type of mistake that I normally never make, and I tend to be pretty hard on myself when I make mistakes like that. So I was pretty mentally frustrated by the concept of being at 16 and not 20, because in my brain I was like, I should be first overall right now, and I'm not. So that I was bothered by it, but overall I knew I was still playing good, doing good. I just had a couple more games until top 16.
Right. You ended pretty good on the leaderboard, like you said. I was, I believe, 6th at the time, but I only had 2 wins and 2 draws. So I was like, I'm pretty high up, but I can still easily get knocked down. So I'm like, uh-oh, I think I still have to win both games tomorrow. Which was
Well, no, just win one. You're at 12.
right, yeah. So I'm like, okay, I just gotta win one game. I would like to win both of them just to like secure myself, but I was like, oof. So I can easily still get knocked out. Like I definitely was not like, I wasn't feeling secure. But I tend to be very paranoid player and very safe in my stuff. So I was like, oh, I gotta win. I gotta win both. I gotta win both. But that was in my mind going finishing day one. But going into day two right away, that game you had was in round 6. It looked pretty intense.
So this game definitely
Stella,
got intense.
Rock Thras, Tim, and then you. Tim is also on Nadu.
Gold Sabertooth, on Nadu as well. The short of this game was Tim's Nadu, which his is designed to be like a stormy, quick landfall, like win fast type of deck, really quick enablement, really quick storm. And he got there very, very quickly, where I kept a slower interactive hand, which I shouldn't have done in 4th seed. That just like didn't work out at all with my enablement. Sorry, I'm waiting on a burp here. You can cut that out if you want. I don't care.
Oh, we leave
but yeah, what caused the intensity in this game is Tim was in a position that, from his revealed cards in this following turn cycle, going into his last turn, he had deterministic, like 100%, no question asked, like all cards revealed to win. And so I looked at the table, the other two players at the table, and I was like, do you guys recognize that we're completely cooked here? And they were like, yes. And so I was like, okay, because Tim not only had revealed the entire win, he had also revealed multiple pieces of counter magic. So he was like, secure win. And so I was like, okay, so like we are 100% losing here to Tim if we do not work together. Even if we work together, we're probably losing to Tim. So I essentially proposed that we all reveal our hands to each other, agree that if we can stop him, we ID. And they were 100% about it and immediately just like so on board. So me and the two other players like all revealed our hands to each other, looked at them together, saw our pieces of interaction, where my hand was only interaction. I had a bunch of it. And then it was Stella had a couple pieces, other deck had a couple pieces. Like we had counter magic collectively. And as Tim turn starts, what we decide is our best course of action is actually Stella going for a win and us trying to protect it over trying to stop Tim. Because we decided, we're like, okay, if Stella goes for a win, that's a deterministic we get an ID. If we just stop Tim this turn, we actually all can't present wins if we spend all our cards doing that, and then he probably just wins on his next turn and there was enough time left on the clock.
Right.
So we end up saying like, okay, so Stella puts the like usual mystical tutor line on the stack on top of Tim's thing. I forget. I think Tim cast a fish or a worldly. I think it was Tim cast a worldly tutor, and that was what started the chain. Where I was like, because I knew Stella had misstepped, so Stella misstepped, Stella mystical tutored first, put Cerulean Wisp on top, then used the misstep to have it exile to the Stella trigger.
Yeah.
And combined in our numerous number of things, it was like I had a Legolas's quick reflexes, I had a Manamo that could untap Stella, they had a Shore Up that could untap Stella. Like our lines to produce the Stella win here were way better than just stopping Saber. Yeah. And this started this like long chain of interaction and attempts that did get pretty intense. And I do have to take some recognition that I definitely got intense in this game. I don't think I like actively did, like I don't think I ever did anything unsportsmanlike or anything in this game. I know Tim got pretty frustrated just by like the concept of me essentially playing the other players' decks for them, because what sort of happened in this game was once we had all agreed to work together and everyone's looking at each other's hands, like I was very much orchestrating our attempt at an idea and directing, like we use this here, we use this here, we use this here. Like I was 100% playing their decks for them, but that's legal and is 100% fine as long as like the players have agreed on it and they're like, yes, we are working together to stop you here. But that definitely did produce some frustration out of Tim when he was like trying to win the game, that we were just doing this, which I understand and I empathize with those frustrations. And it definitely got a little bit intense over some interaction points that led to some confusion. So one that was a little confusing that led to, I think this was like the most intense moment, was after I Legolas's quick reflexes Stella. What ends up happening there is when Stella taps to target a spell to copy it, there's also a Legolas's quick reflexes trigger on it. And so we were using those to target my creatures, so I get Nadu triggers, which will draw me more cards and potentially hit me even more interaction. I had a judge question regarding how you could order these things, because I wasn't sure if, because they're happening like sort of at the same time, if you could have the Stella copy be on top of the stack above the Legolas's damage, because that would mean that we would be able to untap Stella before targeting my elf again, rather than my elf taking the damage and dying and not being there, which is a difference of one card. So I called a judge on that situation, and then I appealed and went to the head judge in that situation, because the first judge said no, and then the head judge actually agreed with me and said yes. And then the head judge came back 2 minutes later and said, I thought about it again, no. And I was like, okay. So like, it was a little bit confusing. But then after all of those judge calls, Stella was in a position that it was untapped. And at that point, it had already targeted my Nadu and my elf with the Cerulean Whips copies that Gold Sabertooth was kind of passing on here, and letting happen a little bit. And so, because 2 copies had resolved, and they were saying that Stella was untapped, I was saying you should have 2 cards in hand, and he only had 1 card in hand. And Tim was saying very clearly that he should only have 1 card in hand. And my confusion was Tim saying he should only have 1 card in hand, while the other 2 players were saying that Stella was untapped. And in my brain math there, I'm like, if Stella is untapped, that means that 2 Cerulean Whiffs have resolved, and that means that you have 2 cards in hand. We ended up coming down to the conclusion that Stella was tapped at this time, and we would be responding from that point, and so he should only have 1 card in hand, and the copy of Cerulean was on the stack.
Yeah.
So we got there. And then, yeah, what ends up happening is Tim was able to then counter the OG copy of Cerulean Wisps, so it couldn't be copied anymore. And then with the last copy of it on the stack that he did not counter, I Noxious Revivaled those Cerulean Wisps back to the top of his deck. So it was the card he drew off of the copy of Cerulean Wisps, and then was able to do it again. So yeah, that one did get a little bit intense here, which I know is obviously, like with everything that's been going on with me, something I have to be on the watch for. I don't know about that one. It's like I was never disrespectful to any players or anything. Like, anyone in that pod will happily agree with that. It was more so just like an intense political situation of like 3 people trying to team up against 1 player who was in an incredibly dominant spot.
I definitely think that's like the prime reason of Tim's frustration. Just having these 3 players like having to pile up on you, which I don't know, really just goes to show like how great of a pilot he is and how great the deck is. Like, you know,
100%.
Like just like we have to do this. So there's no way we're winning or ID.
And to be crystal fucking clear, I love Gold Sabertooth with a passion. He is a wonderful, wonderful human being, and I appreciate everything he does for the community and everything he's done for me. And like this is not in any way saying anything negative about him at all. Like, it's frustrations are clear there. Like, I'd be tilted in that spot as well. It's a frustrating thing when like you feel like you're about to win a game, and you know, instead 3 players all work together, and I can see why it would be annoying to have 1 player essentially just like take 3 hands and play them.
Yeah, it's
which isn't what I physically did, but that's like what happened. Which like, again, it's this weird thing where like I understand the frustrations from it, but that also is completely legal when we're all working together.
Yeah. Well, while you were having a crazy game, I was having a sad game. In my round 6 was pretty fast, surprisingly. It was first seat a Nadu player, second Sisay. Third seat was an Atali, and then me in 4th seat. I mulliganed down to like an interactive 5 because I'm like, I gotta keep something. I haven't found any kind of wins, and I don't think I could find like any kind of win like 4 or less cards. So, like 5-card interaction hand, and it was one of them was a Stern Dismissal. So I'm like, I'm gonna hit a Nadu, I'm gonna hit a Sisay, I'm gonna hit a Atali, whatever I see first, it's getting smacked. And Atali proceeds to mulligan to 3, which I was like, damn it. Because I really wanted them to be a little bit more threatening at the table, since they can be faster than Sisay and Nadu, potentially. And it's like, also just rip a bunch of cards away from Nadu and Sisay, maybe some important cards from them. I'm obviously thinking the same thing can happen to me, but like I have so many condensed win cons that I'm not too scared of that. So they mulligan down to 3, missed land drops. Sisay had a turn 1 gemstone or turn 0 gemstone, and they were able to get out a turn 2. Oh, sorry, getting ahead of stuff. Nadu is coming out, and I tried to Stern Dismissal it. It gets mental misstep. They have it out, and they also have the Untapper Alchemist, I believe. Sisay has like a turn 2 Smothering Tide that I'm like, fuck, if this resolves, we're not winning this game. And I had a Pact of Negation in my hand, but I'm just like, I know Nadu also had one of the other cards in there. Oh, they had like 2 tutors in their hand. So I'm like, I can't just use my interaction here, and then Nadu's just gonna go for it or just draw enough cards to like my counter's not gonna matter. The Sisei player was like, hey, if you don't counter it, like I can deal with the board for Nadu. I'm like, yeah, sure, but like you're just gonna win. And at that point, like I'm 4C, I only have one piece of interaction. It's not my game. I'm just gonna let them duke it out and maybe I can get there. So I'm like, whatever, pass. Money test resolves. He gets a bunch of treasures. Does what he said he was, remove some like bounce off Battle Alchemist to reset the some summoning sickness and get rid of other stuff. Nadu is just like, I got nothing. I can't even present a win to like try to ID, like showing me his hand, the rest of his hand, and there's like nothing. I'm like, yeah, we're cooked here. We drew a bunch of cards, like me with Timna and Crom, just like try to find a like deluge or something, or some kind of interaction for Sisei. Nadu does the same thing. He like copied my Crom, and we tried to draw some cards. He copied my Timna as well a turn prior, and we just got a bunch of treasures for it. Couldn't find any interaction, and then Sisei just won on like turn 3. So I was like, yeah, we cooked. Like there's nothing.
Gets there.
Yeah, like yeah, we had a. There was no way I was countering this Smothering Tide, and then like we were losing to Nadu. Like I was just in a terrible spot. I'm like, oh well, that's how it went. Oh well, I gotta now win the next one.
Yeah, my round 7 was an ID. Yeah, it was an ID.
Easy ID. My round
which
7
I was mad about.
Really? You wanted to play it out?
I said I wanted to play. I think I was second seat in my round 7 game. Yeah, I mean, I told myself going into this tournament. Same thing I did at Snowy Summit. I was in the same situation. I told myself pre-tournament that I would be doing no pre-game IDs. I would accept like King Makey mid-game IDs if we needed to do those. Like that's just how games go sometimes. Right. But I would not accept any pre-game IDs. And I was against double Rogsai and Blue Farm. And they made it very clear to me at the start of this game that if I made them play it out, they would make sure this game went to a draw no matter what. And given the fact that that's what I was being told, and the fact that it was against double Rogsai, and if you're in a situation that, you know, you're essentially being bullied into a draw where everyone's saying we're just going to stop you no matter what and draw, the likelihood that one of those Rogsais doesn't sneak through and win is also really unlikely, because interaction's being used unnecessarily on you even when it shouldn't there in that type of situation. So I decided to not waste an hour of my time, even though it was not something I wanted to do. And I've been trying to push, like, I know I was known as like the draw king for a while, but I've really been trying to push for no IDs lately. And it felt great at Snowy Summit. Like I played my rounds 4 and 5 when I was absolutely number 1 seed and locked, and from 3rd and 4th seed didn't give a fuck. It was great. I had a great time.
Yeah, it worked out.
You know,
yeah, it's really hard like to not pre-game ID when like a similar thing happened to me. Like I said, in like round 3. So yeah, that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
But going into my round 7 was also a feature match. It was me at first seat, second seat my buddy Alan on Fata Adele, doing fairly well in the deck, so I'm really proud of him. It's been performing great. Definitely struggling in this tournament, and he's informed me as well with all the Rogsais. Third seat was Rakdos the Muscle, which I was excited to see because I haven't seen a lot of Rakdos. And then in fourth seat, a Rog Thrasios. So the game we developed pretty early on, pretty good amount of stuff early on. I got a Ristic Study pretty early. The Rog Thras also got a Ristic Study, and then Rakdos, which is, I don't know if it is correct or if it's just something of Rakdos, but even with these 2 Ristic Studies, Rakdos decides to just send it and try to go for it, which is like, my guy, there's 2 Ristic Studies. Like, what are you doing?
It's what the deck does, dude. It's like what else? If you're sitting around and not going for it, you're not winning the game anyway. That's kind of where they're at. True,
and I guess it did almost work in his favor because I think we had like 2 turns back to back trying to stop him. It was pretty crazy. I was drawing a lot of stuff, not too much interaction, but a lot of like Valley pieces. Same thing with Rog Thrasios. We definitely got in a big like little political like thing of like, hey man, I'm not gonna use my interaction unless Rog Thrasios use it first, since you're coming up in turn order. And like, you know, you're coming up next with a bunch of cards in hand. And you know, he's worried about the same thing about me. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna hold it for you. And obviously thought Adele's not gonna use anything because they're like in last turn order. So like, that's the order it's going to be. You got to use all yours. I will then have to use all mine, and then Thada will use theirs. So we're going back and forth, like trying to stop things, where to like interact on the stack. Thrasios Raj is like showing me their hand, like, look, I got no piece of interaction. And I see in their hand, they're like, oh fuck, they got like nasty cards, bunch of tutors, really good ways to like find a win, and it's like looking real scary. So we decided to finally stop Rakdos, or at least I use another piece of interaction, and then we finally get to the Rock Grass turn, and he starts to go for a win. I'm using interaction. Thought Adele's now having to use interaction as well. And he resolves an apple, which was super scary. And I'm showing, like, you can see on the stream game, like I'm basically like revealing my hand here, but like, listen, I got a Imperial Seal and a Born Upon a Win, so he can just find whatever he wants, and a bunch of other stuff that's like super value. And I am trying to, like, he was gonna pick me regardless because the other two players had like almost no cards in hand. But I was really trying to overvalue my hand because I wanted him to crack this apple because he wouldn't have many other pivot points to go to another win. He had a bunch of other cards, and he would have to, like, I think he had to LED to get rid of his like hand to have mana for stuff. So I was like really wanting him to go for this apple play because it really wouldn't have worked out for him. So he decides to finally apple. It resolves on the stack. I use my last piece of interaction in my hand to red blast his risk study because I know if I give it to him, he's going to do the same to me. So I give him his hand. He looks at my hand of all lands, rocks, and just Imp Seal and Born Upon a Win, and he's just like, "Your hand is garbage." I'm like, yeah, it is, but
yeah, it is.
Go for it, dog. Try to find a line here, and I'm giving him sufficient time. Like, we definitely should have like been like, "Hey man, slow play." Like, he was definitely taking a little more time than he should have, but I was like feeling pretty good. Anything he tried to cast from my hand, I was drawing 2 cards because I had a Ristic Study, and then the apple, when he casts a spell from my hand, I draw a card. So he's drawing me cards, and the table is like talking about like, "Hey man, don't do anything, try to reset, maybe try not to cast a bunch of stuff," and like, you know, because we got to get to his turn now, and you're gonna give him his whole hand. And he's like revealing my hand of like, I don't even know what we can do because like I'm like, "You can reveal my hand." I already showed it to him. Like, I know it's face down. I think technically he should not have played my hand.
Technically, you are not allowed to show the cards.
But I was okay with it. The other players were okay with it. The judge was like, if everyone was fine with this, sure. But I still think technically he can't do that as per game. Yeah. But I was like, they already know my hand, so there's no new information, so it's all the same. So they're like, whatever. So they're trying to figure out. I'm trying to like tell them of like, or at least I'm trying to convince him of like, you could like do this and this, because I also want those cards to go to my graveyard because I have Breach and like almost everything in my graveyard. So I'm like, I would rather just have those in my graveyard because then I will have 4 cards if he casts those 2 spells. So I'm trying to tell him what he can play to like reset, sort of, but it wouldn't be nowhere good enough to stop me. So he decides to like try to not cast as much stuff. The other players are also convincing him like, "Man, don't cast them. You're just giving him 2 cards. Like, it's just not worth doing it. Just like leave it. Force him to like have the Imp Seal and, you know, do all that stuff to just get like 1 card instead of you giving him 4. And so he decides not to cast any more stuff. And he's absolutely nothing in his hand. He's hellbent. He's got nothing. Passes to me. Go to my turn. And I had the Breach line in the graveyard. The only thing I was missing was a way to get it back. I didn't have Savines. I did have a Wishclaw Talisman to just get it, but the rest of the stuff in my hand was like garbage. It was just land and rocks. And I knew they didn't have anything. I knew they were completely, you know, there's nothing that they had in their hand. There was no way they could have stopped me. And I decided to just play out my hand, a bunch of rocks, make mana, copy there's like dock sides on the field to copy a bunch of times, and then try to go for it by taking an extra turn and drawing a bunch of cards and resetting with the Wheel of Fortune. That probably shouldn't have done that because I think I still had it without having a wheel, but I like to be a very safe player, and I knew there was no way they could have drawn anything to stop me, and I had enough damage to kill the Thought Adele player, so even if they had interaction, there was no way they were going to do that. However, I fucked up because I forgot that their One Ring was still online, and they still had protection.
Yikes.
So I fucked up on the math because we had so much time. Like, we spent like, I don't know, 20 minutes on one turn talking. So I fucked up and didn't have enough damage. So then that made my wheel like way more riskier than it should have been. I still managed to find the win. They didn't have anything. I managed to get silence effects. I have Angel's Grace to protect me in case there was something to stop me. So there was like really nothing for me to fear. But definitely me forgetting that One Ring made the play a lot riskier. So then finally go to my turn. I have a bunch of stuff. I have like so many cards in my graveyard, and I just go for a win of just mill my library, Das's Oracle, and we're good to go. And then I take I take it and make my way into top 16.
Good job. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a little scary at first, but I was able to, get there with enough politics and just showing my hand like multiple times throughout the game. I'm showing everybody my hand like there's nothing to worry about, bro. There's nothing to worry about.
I love the hand reveal. I love the hand reveal.
I was doing a VOD review of it to try to see where I could have done things different, and I just hear Hot Dog and I forgot who the other caster was. They were just like, what is happening, as everyone's just revealing hands to each other. It's a pretty crazy game.
Yeah.
But let's go into the top 16. Another crazy game for me, Max. Oh my god. Every time I looked over there, it's always something insane. And again, you and Tim back on it again. So you and Tim on Nadu, and then there was a Niv Mizzet and a Malcolm Vile. What happened at that game?
Yeah, fortunately, this game had no intense issues or anything. It was just it was a really good game of Magic. But pre-game was very interesting. A guy I know, Everett, was a Malcolm Vile player in fourth seat, and he's playing a Malcolm deck. He's a pirate, and so he pulls out a pirate hat, and he pulls out a bird to go on his shoulder. And I look at him and I go, "Can I get the bird?" So he said, "Fuck yeah, dude." So I played both my top 16 and the finals game with a parrot on my shoulder.
Yeah, that was,
which was fun.
I remember just going by and be like, "Where the fuck did this parrot come from?" He definitely didn't have one.
I named it Udon.
Oh, nice. That's cute.
It's Nadu backwards. But yeah, so this game, I fortunately was on the play. So I was on the play on Nadu. We had Tim Sabretooth, Nadu going second. We had Niv Mizzet going third, and we had Malcolm Vile going fourth. Very notably, Malcolm Vile mulls to like 3 or 4. Like an absolute they had nothing going on in this game. Once again, Tim's deck is faster than mine and quickly gets set up to start having some triggers with a Paradise Mantle as just like a cheap equipper that can still draw him, 4 extra cards a turn for 4 mana type thing. And my plan got screwed because my hand was all based around a turn 3 Unctus. Was what I was going to be doing. I was going to be Invasion of Ikoria for Unctus with the mana I had. And turn 1 Niv Mizzet plays Grafdigger's Cage. So that plan is out of the window, not there anymore, and kind of screwed me pretty hard. So my hand at that point didn't really do or accomplish anything. So Tim got set up much more quickly than me with just like Paradise Mantle for getting triggers. And, I go to play a Displacer Kitten on turn 3 with the mana I have instead. And I have no enablement for Displacer Kitten outside of the fact that like I have a Crop Rot and a Worldly Tutor in hand as like spells that are legally castable that can target my things. And Tim immediately is like, this wins the game. Like this is a card that wins the game. And I was like, yeah, it is involved in combos, but I don't have those right now. And I end up revealing my entire hand to Niv Mizzet. And Niv Mizzet's like, yeah, your hand doesn't do anything right now outside of the Worldly Tutor. He knew the Worldly Tutor was a problem, and that was it. Because the Worldly Tutor was going to get Unctus realistically, or something like that. And so, and Niv Mizzet ends up also like kind of revealing their hand where they have a Red Blast and a Psych Rift. And he's put into this very awkward spot of, if he just uses his interaction on me, then Tim obviously wins. And also, if he just uses a bunch of interaction on Tim, then I'll get too far ahead. So he's kind of stuck in this prisoner's dilemma facing down the 2 Nadu decks. And we end up coming to an agreement, Tim and I and the Niv player, for him to not use his interaction, as like he keeps not using it as we play more things, where he's like, you guys can have 2 Nadu triggers every turn. Anything more than that, you've broken that. And then a turn goes by where my next turn cycle, when I have like a couple of random triggers from playing at that point, I play an Apheto Alchemist, which is a great card that can get a lot of triggers. And same idea here. And Tim still has significantly more cards in hand to me and has more creatures and more mana and all that kind of stuff. And we're still, the Niv Mizzet player isn't using interaction because he feels like he's in this awkward spot of, if he uses interaction, then he doesn't have anything. So it's weird. And on Tim's next turn, he ends up going for 3 Nadu triggers. which is more than the deal said we could do, and I noticed that immediately. I'm like, oh, okay. It's a little extra here, huh? Like he could have done more. He didn't do all of them. It's not like he tried to push and go off, but like he did go 3 instead of 2. So then when it goes to my next turn, I'm like, okay, it feels like this deal's kind of done. So I go like a Apheto, target Apheto twice. That's my 2 triggers, and then I go and cast a spell for a Kitten trigger. And immediately Tim is like, whoa, 2 triggers. And I was like, brother, you did more. I was like, you did more. He was like, oh, I just did 3. It was only 3. And I was like, oh, so we're just doing 3 now? I was like, okay. So I just did a third trigger, and then I could have done more. And true to my word, I passed the turn. Because what I could do is every spell I cast with Displacer Kitten, like when I flicker Nadu, I can then Feto twice again.
Mhm.
So one of the cards I revealed there was Sea King's Blessing, which at the time I had 5 creatures on board. And so, I go to Tim's turn, and, Tim does his first thing, and I'm like, okay, a Feto, target a Feto. Like, I'm not on my turn now. I can get my naughty triggers from a Feto. So I do a Feto, target a Feto twice, draw 2 cards, and then Tim goes, okay, I'm just going to cast this Mystic Remora. And one thing we talked about, me and Tim both had revealed Docents. And he offered a Docent pact that neither of us could cast or Docent. And I said very clearly, I said, I'm not going to make a Docent pact and a deal, but I will be very clear that at this exact time, I have no intention of casting Docent with what I currently have in hand. Like, my hand does not in any way represent a win. Like, I have no intention of casting Docent if my hand is anything similar to this right now. I don't know what cards I'm going to get, so I'm not willing to make a hard deal or a pact, but, like, I'm very honest and very clear with my intentions. And it was like, with my hand at this time, I'm not casting a fucking Docent. And so he puts his fish on the stack, and I'm like, okay, well, I might as well not draw you a free card. So I just do my Sea Kings to draw 5 cards, get a kitchen trigger and stuff like that. And immediately he's like, whoa, you pushing for a win attempt, my guy? And I'm like, I have no idea what cards I'm gonna get here. Like I don't know what I'm doing at this time. That's part of the fun of the deck. And he seemed to take it very much that I was going to be pushing by the casting of this Sea Kings, which, like, obviously I'm hoping to eventually push, but in this exact moment, like, I don't know what I'm gonna get. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Tim's revealed cards also kind of represented a win. So it was a weird, awkward spot. Where then we started having this big interaction battle over a lot of things, because they felt that I was trying to push when at that exact moment I wasn't trying to push. But I do have a Mystic Remora on the battlefield, so every spell they cast, I draw a card, and then every piece of interaction I use also flickers my Nadu with Displacer Kitten, getting me a card, and then every time I flicker my Nadu, I can then tap my Feto twice to draw 2 more cards. So I was in a position that every piece of interaction they used essentially represented 4 cards for me from every spell I cast. So while my hand at that moment was not ready to push and win the game, the fact that they started this interaction battle changed that. And if they had just let the Sea Kings go, I wasn't going to be going for a win. Like, I was just trying to not let him have a card. My hand didn't do anything at the time. But then, yeah, I mean, I really quickly started drawing a lot of interaction and a lot of gas. And one card I had since my opener was Crop Rotation. And, I'm a big fan of Emergence. So as I'm doing all of these Nadu triggers in this big interaction battle over all of these random things, and they're trying to Mog salvage my Spell's Guide and then Pongify my Nadu and blah 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 and hit all of these things, and I'm just responding on top of it and keep going, and then finally I cast the Crop Rotation. The Crop Rotation resolves. I'm able to get the Emergence Zone, and then it's like, do I have deterministic line at that point? But it's every single spell I cast, because at that point I'd revealed Mindbreak Trap and Flusterstorm and all these things as well. They were all just completely revealed and castable. And I had, Mox Diamond and Chrome Mox and Mana Vault and all these random spells in hand that every single one of those I cast is Flicker Nadu and then tap a Feto twice. So every single one of those is 3 cards as well. So they conceded in the situation. And I got the top 16 win.
Yeah. Insane.
So that was a weird one.
Yeah, I just looking back at the table throughout my game, because my game ended fast. So I'm just like popping in, seeing what's going on. I'm like, whoa, like this looks like a classic double Nadu board state. It's insane. A bunch of triggers were going off. Like, I think I left to like get pizza again, came back, and like the game went on pretty long. Like, I don't know how long overall the game went, but it definitely felt like it was going on for like a while. Like, it was a crazy game.
Yeah.
All right, going into my top 16, it was Sergio on Rogsai in first seat, me in second seat, and then we had a Sisei and then a Kenrith. So going into this game, I'm thinking I have to either find a heavy interaction hand to stop the Rogsai, because I know these 2 other decks are slightly slower, and I don't, as long as they don't have like a, Sisei doesn't have a turn 2 Simodian Tithe, I should be fine with like dealing with them. So I think it went to either my second 7 or a 6, and in my hand was a land, Cavern of Souls, Painted Pact, and Consultation, and the rest were irrelevant cards. So like, Interesting hand. Yes, I will gladly
Yeah.
take this.
I will take this greedy hand.
Yes, for sure. With the Roxai in first, like I'm assuming he's gonna do something, get stopped, and then on my turn I'll just send it and get there. Something like that happened where Sergio goes to he plays land, past Roxai. He's thinking about his hand a lot. Like he's putting like a lot of time of thought into his hand, and he's like, "Oh, I played the wrong land. Can I switch out lands?" And the judge was like, "No, because you already cast Roger, so you can't change your land."
Yeah.
And I don't know how much different, but he seemed really beat up about that. So I'm like, I don't know what the difference would be in the land that you picked, but it seems like it was a big enough difference for you to be very upset about. So he was like, I can see himself like just not happy with himself. So like, play some lands out, whatever, pass, go around, back to his turn. I think he entombed it was a Bola Citadel. Goes on his turn, he plays the one little goblin that swaps cards, or engineer, I believe.
Yeah.
But he didn't have another artifact at the time, so he's already set up. I'm like, okay, it's getting pretty crazy. Play my second land, or I play my second land, trying to show that I don't have double blue, just to kind of make sure nothing's going on. We go around, and the other players then play a God, what was it? They played since they played Ashiok to then exile the graveyard, getting rid of the Bola Citadel. So I'm like,
Okay.
cool, all right. And then it goes to Kemna's turn, and he plays Dranith. I'm like, okay, Roxai, I think, is sufficiently stopped. I could still go for the win, or I can go for a granny game plan. It'll depend really what Roxai does. Roxai takes his turn, does nothing, goes to instead. So I'm like, okay, Painted Pack. No one has anything for it. And I'm thinking I could find, if there's a Rhystic Study in the first like 10 cards, I'm gonna keep it and just grind out this game. I should be safe. I think I exiled like 20 cards off the top of my library. None of them were wins, but it was a good chunk of my library before I saw a Rhystic Study. So now I'm like, I'm pretty deep. I'm just gonna say fuck it. Go all the way down, and all my win cons and everything were like at the bottom of the deck. So it was good I didn't go for this Rhystic, because I wouldn't have done shit. I don't think I would have won this game. So I go until I find Thassa, go to my turn, play Cavern of Souls and Wizard, pass Thassa, trigger on stack. I'll show my consultation. And the only interaction at the table was Kenrith with a strict serenade in his hand that he couldn't cast. And then I just got it. It was like, yeah.
Well, if you remember that your cavern works, yeah.
I specifically looked at this cavern and was like, this is for you, Max. I'm gonna remember this. So that was a quick game.
Good job.
Yeah, I was surprised, but not surprised that the other two players didn't keep anything really to stop Roxai, which I guess they did. They had the Ashiok and the Granite, but I don't know. I feel like, what do you think? Do you think that was too slow for them to?
Yeah, it's way too slow. If they're playing on turn 3 or whatever, like turn 2 after Roxai, that's not fast enough.
Yeah. I don't know what more Sisek could have done. I know they don't really have a lot of reaction, so I guess that like stops Roxai if he gets to their turn and then helps their Sisek. But I don't know. The rest of the hand must have been good enough that they were just like gonna risk it on that Ashiok. So that's how my top 16 went, and now we're moving on into the final pod. How are you feeling going into this top 4?
Double Roxai Blue Farm, not great. not great, because I'm used to Roxais just jerking each other off. That's kind of what they do. So I wasn't feeling amazing about it, and my hope was just have a hand that can draw more cards and has a piece of free interaction. Like, that was my goal. And that was why I turned to you pre-game before the game started. And I said, if you don't keep interaction, we are losing this game. I cannot stop both of them together, because that's again, like what we talked about earlier. When there's two Roxais, it's your one piece of interaction you have will not stop both of them. Unless you're playing down. Like, when I'm on Kinnan, I can land, Kinnan's a little better at that, because it's like, I can land a Trinisphere or a Manglehorn or a Glenalundra, like something that really tells them to get fucked. Yeah. This deck does not have that. This deck is way more total pieces of on the stack interaction, but less stacks effects. Doesn't have any. So I knew I needed a buddy there, or there was no way that either of us was winning this game. And I guess there's a level of blue farm philosophy there, where if you find just like the nutty proactive hand, you could say like maybe first Roxai gets stopped by you, and then you can quickly win the game. But it didn't matter when they go like that. So what was your thoughts?
My thoughts was ecstatic that I got to the top 4 in a big tournament. I've been doing really well, but only just small tournaments. So this is like the first big one. I'm like, finally, I got it up to final pot in a big tournament. So I'm feeling
Congratulations.
really good. Thank you. I'm feeling fantastic. And then I saw the pod composition and was like, well, shit. But like you said, I'm like, you know what? I'm going third. You might have to stop the first Rogsai, and then maybe I stop the fourth Rogsai, but we could still be in a spot where we can kind of develop, or we're probably not gonna mess with each other just because like we need to develop. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling too bad about it. But just having Rogsai in first seed is always just like, man, really hard, a lot harder to deal with. But what was your first 7 that you kept?
My first 7 was a turn 1 Seeker of Skybreak while holding up a Force of Vigor, which is not perfect, but it's a good enough 7 that it represents I have a free piece of interaction for something, and I have an enabler to draw me cards, and my mana did allow me to play Naughty on turn 2, like with the Seeker, because it was a Crypt box. So I'd have permanent mana, and that to me was like, this hand is not, it's not a god draw, it's not perfect, but it has enablement and it has free interaction, and that's really all I can ask for in this type of situation.
Likewise, mine wasn't perfect, but it was like, I think one of the best anti-Rogsai cards. I had 3 lands, Crypt, 2 tutors, and a Angel's Grace. So I'm like, this was I think one of my second 7, and I was thinking of mulliganing this hand, but like it's Angel's Grace. Like if it usually Rogsai will try to set up turn 1 and then go for it turn 2, and I'll have Angel's Grace active. So when he goes for it, that's the line he's gonna be fucked, and then we only have to worry about 1 Rogsai. So the only thing I was worrying about was like if he wheels, this is really bad because this is the premium interaction in this deck against Rogsai and just like fast lines. So I thought about it for a good amount of time, thinking, how good is this hand? Is this Angel's Grace good enough? And I think it was, because I had the Angel's Grace and I had 2 tutors.
I don't think it is.
It's Angel's Grace, bro. Split second, there's nothing they could have done. I think it was good enough. I had 2 tutors and a Crypt, so I'm like, this is not that bad. I think this is okay. It really just needs to get to my turn to have the mana for it. Even if he goes for a wheel, Angel's Grace on the stack, you try to do your thing, and it might give us another turn, or they would have to try to find a Final Fortune line. So I thought it was good enough. At least I don't think I could have gone any more, because at that point there was no way I was keeping the interaction hand, and I needed to find like a really fast win. So that's my thought process on that first 7. And I mean, you mentioned it too. Once we got to Rogsai's turn and they do it and they fucking wheel their hand away, people looked at it and were like, "You're so safe." Like that was probably a more safer hand that I should have kept, but I was really just stuck on that Angel's Grace being like so good against Rogsai. But yeah, I don't know how much more we can say about this game. It just really was Rogsai popping off.
What is your opinion on Rogsai first seed giving the Wish Claw to Rogsai 4th seed? Even with my offered deal of I will never activate it.
Honestly, I wish they were here. I'd even to ask them that too, honestly. Like, I find that so I don't know what the relationship is. I don't know what the relationship between Ryan and Derek are. I don't know if they are friends, because if they're friends, sure, makes sense. You give it to them. The other hand is worst case scenario, I think, or like to be very cynical, if you are a Rogsai player giving the Wish Claw to like another Rogsai player, I find that of like kind of a show of disrespect of like, I don't think you're gonna get there, even with this sticker.
That is not how I take it at all.
That's how I take it sometimes. That's the more cynical of like, damn, bro, like you're not respecting Rogsai with this like with this Wish Claw, like that's interesting. Like, but then like best case I think like, oh, I would assume their buds are from like the same area, I think. So I'm like, oh, it's his friend. He's just getting I'm like, that's something that I expect from buds to do. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the relationship is, but they're probably just buds giving them Wish Claws. But I think it is incorrect to just give it to them, because like you want to increase your win rate. You don't want to give it to another Rogsai and like risk you not winning. So like you definitely would give it to one of us to like.
Oh, I think it's an objectively incorrect play from a win percentage perspective. Yeah.
Well, how are you feeling when you did it? Like, what were your thoughts on it?
When they passed it to Rogsai,
yeah,
I said, cool. This is normal Rogsai's literally jerking each other off, and there's no chance I have in this game, and I don't care about this game, honestly.
Yeah. Is there anything any of us could have drawn to like come out of this? See a turn 3.
If we drawn, I mean, realistically, yes. If on the final turn, what's his name? Derek had used his Force of Egg, then yeah, we would have saw another turn.
Yeah, that
But
was.
that's about it.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. God, I wish he was here so we can ask him of why. Why wouldn't you force some negation?
So I actually spent the night with Derek. I
Perfect.
ended up hanging out with him and his friends, and he really thought that other Rogsai was just gonna wheel again. Which I don't know why or how that's the thought when your graveyard has complete win in it with the meme bet, but that's his thought process.
Interesting. Yeah, I showed it to him too. I pulled out my graveyard. I'm like, he has definitive win with my graveyard. Like, it's here. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane. Like, he has literally every piece in my graveyard alone.
Yeah.
Not including anything else. But yeah, he still didn't decide to. And I guess you had your interaction. We're like, all right, dude, I guess he wins. We're not gonna do it. And yeah, Ryan just takes the game, and we just sat back and watched the Rogsai unfold. Well, with that top 4 ending the way it did, do you have any kind of reservations or fear of the meta moving forward with Rogsai getting a big win under its belt?
Well, it's had several. I mean, it had, Punt City with Tad and people, and, NATO did it at Final Fortune. Like, it's been consistently doing really, really well. I think the problem with Rogsai, kind of like I said earlier, is it's a deck that is inherently advantaged by more people playing it. Like, it's a deck that does so well in pods that have multiples of them. Like, it almost guarantees one of those decks is winning. So the more people that play Rogsai, the more that pattern progresses, and then the more people that play Rogsai, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that regard. So, I mean, that's my concern with it.
I guess what I mean is, because I know there was a period of time before, like, MH3, obviously, where Rogsai was, like, seeing top pods, but they weren't getting the win until pretty recently. I think it's getting a lot more wins in, like, the past, year, right? It's gotten...
Yeah, I mean, it just got more consistent
the one you said,
with Necrodome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess now with, like, it for sure picking up wins now instead of, like, making it top, like, that little moment it had where it just bunch of top 4s, top 16s, but it just couldn't get there. But now it is getting there. How much more do you think the meta is going to shift? Do you think people are going to play more greedy, try to make their decks more faster? Are we going to start seeing some other decks die out because they're just like, they just can't keep up with Rogsai? They're not going to play them, or more people jumping ship to Rogsai?
Definitely a lot more people jumping ship to Rogsai. I mean, that's been happening. That's definitely something you should expect. How people end up playing, I mean, I know I'm just going to play even more responsibly, but how will other people play? I don't know. I can't say.
I guess it really will depend on the type of deck. Because, like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm on Blue Farm, and I like the consistency of the deck and the resilience of it, which is why I'm not playing Rogsai. But I don't think I could play the deck or make it any more faster. So I think it would be, like you said, just, like, changing patterns and being more responsible. But if I'm at a table with, like, double Rogsai, I'd like to say, like, there's, like, what are you gonna do?
I mean, Rogsai is actually ass if you just hold up interaction, but it's also they're just consistently psyoping the fucking cEDH community, saying endurance is cope and all this bullshit because they're the good cards against them. Like,
yeah. If you're playing white, I would urge you to slot in an Angel's Grace. Like, it just
Angel's Grace is so bad.
You're trolling, dude. Split
So
second, exile your library, get fucked, you're out of the game. It's
really good. I can tell you right now, I have had Angel's Grace used against me in like 4 tournament games now. I have won every single one of those tournament games. It has not mattered.
That's
I have found a line around it every time. I was on an ob game. I wasn't on a Final Fortune turn, so I was just on an ob game, and I just drained them out looping Citadel and then passed the turn and won. I was on an Italian game where they had the Angel's Grace in response to my Infinite Bowmasters, and I just cloned the Displacer Kitten and was able to just like do it again on their turn type thing. Like, it doesn't matter. You can always find a way around Angel's Grace.
You could find a way with it. I think the decks you're saying are like, you can find ways around those, but there's some decks like Rogsai where it's a little harder. Like, they go all in using a lot of resources for whatever line they're going for, which is usually a Thassa line. And if you stop it there, there's sometimes like, oh shit, they're dead in the water. But I think it's good. I've been playing it since day one. It's fantastic. I think it's good. All right. Well, that is another big tournament.
Oh,
What?
Did I ever tell you that I actually had a line in the finals game if it got passed to me?
We were kind of talking about it. I don't remember it. What was the line that you had?
So if I untapped and I top decked any blue source, then I had Flesh Triplicate in hand to clone Dockside and make like 10 treasures or whatever. And then I could play Nadu, play Eternal Witness, get back Invasion of Ikoria, play Unctus. And then have 3 creatures on the battlefield to like try.
That's pretty hot.
Yeah. Give me an option. I was like, oh man, am I gonna? It's not that it didn't fucking matter, but like,
yeah, if it goes to your turn, I know I had like a super like Hail Mary line that was showing you with like land, gamble, dark rit, try to get into the necro, and like not have any of the 4 cards we need to get discarded to the gamble. We had that for like after the first wheel, like that was.
Yeah, which fortunately I looked at my top deck. It was going to be an Eldritch Evolution, not a blue source, so I don't have any harboring feelings about it.
Any what ifs?
Yeah, any like, oh man, if only Derek could use that Force and egg.
True. All right. Well, with another big tournament under the belt, Max, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. Especially with everything I went through this last month, which I don't want to go too deep into, but definitely trying to improve as a person, as a player. Not perfect, still growing, still learning, still developing. There's definitely been moments where I will say, like, if you've been in my tournament games and anything I've done has bothered you, like, please, for the love of God, message me, tell me directly like what I did, because one of the things that's been cumbersome is, like using Snowy Summit as an example when I talked to the judges afterwards, because they kept an eye on me and all that kind of stuff. I was told like, oh yeah, judges said you did nothing wrong in anything they ever saw and you were totally fine. And then a couple players said they didn't really enjoy playing with you. And I was like, okay, like, can you give me an example of something I did? And they were like, nope, we asked the players and they could give us 0 examples. And I'm like, it gives me nothing to go off of. So I will say, just like, if in any of the tournament games that have happened these last couple of weeks or beforehand, any examples you can give me of something I've done that's bothered you, like, please, I'm super open to feedback right now. Like, I am trying to grow and improve as a person, as a player, all that kind of stuff. And these last 2 tournaments were kind of a testing grounds for me mentally of how much would I enjoy tournament Magic still, and it's had its ups and downs. Definitely still having fun playing it. Definitely feels good to still like prove I can still perform and do it on a different deck again. It's been a really good time. So I'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina this coming weekend. I don't know when is this video releasing, you think?
I usually put them out on like Fridays.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a Twitter announcement today while we're recording this, so I can say it on the video. It's really cool to like be sponsored again now. Be contractually obligated to play cEDH is a cool thing again. So good that people still have some faith in me and believe in me and such. And yeah, just hoping to still grow and improve and all the good stuff.
Yeah, I think, there's not a lot more for me to add to that. Like, I've been playing with you online like so many times, so like I've always had a great time. We've always been in like weird prisoner dilemma games. Like, we've had some like crazy games. Like, I probably still have recordings of them. But yeah, I think you've been great. Tournament, you've been great. I know staff has come up and told you like, hey man, you've been doing great. You've improved already, like, in a short amount of time. You've been doing fantastic. So I'm excited to see more from you in the other tournaments out there. I wish West Coast had more bigger tournaments for you to be able to come out here and participate in those. But we'll see how it pans out moving forward with the West Coast. If we still stay with really just Fishbowl and Silicon Dynasty being like the only kind of events that happen out here. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this video. Is there anything else you want to add, Wounded?
I think that's all for today. I appreciate you having me, man.
Perfect. It was great having you, man. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video, subscribe, check out the other videos we had, and I hope to see you guys in future tournaments. If you want to follow me, I am at Dixienormous at just about anywhere. If you want to follow Max over here, WoundedSatellite, he is, I believe, WoundedSatellite at just about everywhere as well. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week and hopefully at another tournament. You guys have a good night. Bye.
Bye.